Welcome into the postgame, guys. It is good news. Rockets win the game 115 to 113 against a team that should have been much better than their record this year. And tonight looked like it, the way that some of these guys played. Rockets basically were, played wall to wall with the Clippers in this game, basically eke it out. Amen Thompson's offensive rebound with 17.2 seconds left proved to be the difference after the Clippers, when the James Harden three had just tied it with 30-something seconds left. And Ben, you mentioned it as you got back, that last basically 15, 30 seconds of the game felt like it took an hour, but Rockets escape after a series of fouls and free throws and all kinds of mess. And they're now 16-6 and escape the 6 and now 19 Clippers here at home.
Yeah, a win is a win, and I think a lot of what happened tonight, they came out pretty rusty and sloppy after that long break, and Kevin Durant in particular was terrible in that first half, and there were a couple of stretches where they almost blew it open. They had it up to an 8-9 point lead and let the Clippers back in every time. If you had even an average Kevin Durant first half, I think it's one of those games where you could have had them at arm's length, and then they sort of succumb to the record. Instead, because you let them play from in front for a lot of the game, then it led a team that, their record is what it is right now, but they have a lot of the same parts from the team that looked like a juggernaut to end last season. You've still got some great individual talents between Harden, Kawhi, and Zubac, and they made this a lot more stressful than I anticipated going into the game. But at the end of the day, this was one the Rockets couldn't lose because the schedule coming up is difficult. A 6-game road trip, 3-6 against the Nuggets and the Lakers. So, yeah, home game against the Clippers, you couldn't afford to lose this one. So before we go into the individuals, this was, nothing's a must win over 82 games, but this was a really need to win, and they got it done.
Yeah, you mentioned early on, KD was struggling. He was 1 for his first 7, really no rebounds, no assists for most of the first half. And you kind of look up and you're like, man, who's going to step up? Sengun wasn't taking a ton of shots, but was efficient. I think he hit 7 of his first 11, finished 2 for his last 11, but early on was definitely quite efficient. It was really a typical Rockets game in the sense of, Ime Udoka said it. They were sloppy. That's not typical. I think a lot of people are mentioning this. You said the same thing. They had 18 turnovers.
KD and Sengun had 5 turnovers apiece.
Yeah, it was messy. It was sloppy. But, as Ime Udoka said, and I jotted it down, when we're turning the ball over at that higher rate, we want to get some back. And he's pointing to their superpower, and that's rebounds. It's fitting that a men's offensive rebound was kind of the game winner, because the difference tonight was 64 to 35 on the boards.
Well, and you know who only had 1 turnover? Amen Thompson. 20 points, 9 boards, 8 assists, 8 of 12 shooting. For all the criticism that Amen has gotten at times this season, because, going into the year, we all hyped this up as a big 3, and perhaps that was a little aggressive for Amen Thompson going into year 3, just 22 years old. But boy, on an off night, at least shooting and efficiency-wise from KD and Sengun, now they did pick it up in the second half, but Amen was great throughout. I don't care how much is on ball, how much is off. He was great on both ends of the floor, and the Rockets don't win this game without him. So for all the talk this year, just lasering in on Amen Thompson every possession, don't forget about this game. This would have been a bad loss, and because you got the peak version of Amen Thompson, that's why you didn't lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know some people are mentioning my mic is a little off, so I'm not sure if it's something here or if it's something on the software side, but
we've had some issues with Riverside lately. Apologies for that. We're working on it. I do wonder, I saw someone, pointing out RIP playback in the comments. I do wonder if Riverside's bandwidth is a little stretched because so many people are having to figure out their, post playback plans, but we'll see.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, and I stayed in playback tonight. We had our final game in the ClutchFans playback room. It was a lot of fun. The game was really quite interesting. Ime broke down how they game planned defensively for this one. This is what they've done, a lot the last couple of years, or Ime Udoka has done. He puts Alperen Sengun on the guy that he wants to shoot threes. In this case, Chris Dunn.
Yeah.
He had, it was notable in the first half. We were talking about it in playback. Sengun could sag off of Dunn 8 to 10 feet. Now, Dunn did start knocking down some threes.
And that's when the game flipped a little bit. The Rockets
Yes.
were playing in front, and then when Dunn made those threes, all of a sudden Sengun couldn't sag back as much, and everything got a lot more free flowing for Kawhi and James.
Right. And that put the primary responsibility of Zubac on Jabari. Now that it wasn't always on Jabari. Shingun got him, a lot of times because there were zones and switches. But Zubac had himself a monster night. 13 of 14. That's right. He missed one shot for 33 points and 7 boards. And they needed every one of those because really they didn't get efficient nights from Harden or Kawhi. The Harden situation, Sengun overall had a good game. He was quite efficient until some of his misses were those putbacks at the end just before amends. I think 3 of those misses counted as offensive tips that he kept volleyballing it up there. He had a really good game, 22 points, 15 boards, 5 assists, 4 steals. Like I said, not overall efficient on the night, but certainly was very efficient in the first half. There was one play I want to definitely pick at a little bit, and that was, and I'm sure the coaches are going to talk to him heavily about it.
The end of the game?
Yeah, the end of the game when he drove and he wanted a foul.
Yeah.
And we talked about it in real time. I noted it in real time. He laid on the ground, had both of his hands up like,
it was a 5-on-4.
It was 5-on-4 for a good stretch. They just whipped the ball until they found Harden, who knocked down a 3 to tie the game. Fortunately, Amen had the tip in, but boy, that was almost costly. Now, I want to balance that with Sengun had a couple of nice isolation drives to score, including one little Akeem-esque, fake it with the right hand, come back and turn and hook it over. So it balanced out, but I'm sure they're going to talk to him about that because that's basically a known flaw, I think, of Sengun is sort of the complaining and the criticizing.
It is, and I thought in a lot of the late game execution situations the last month or so, he had grown out of that. This was sort of going back to that Detroit game is what it made me think of, and so hopefully it's an outlier. I didn't see it as much over the past month, but I agree with you. Staying down on the floor in that situation and allowing the opponents to go 5-on-4, that's tough. It shouldn't have happened. I'm sure they'll point it out. But the bigger thing, Shingun's efficiency was down, but I do think a lot of it, they had to lean on him a lot for shot creation because KD, he did get hot for a stretch in the third quarter, but he was terrible in the first half. And for the game overall, he just looked, I don't know what the word is other than not himself. He just looked sloppy, lethargic, the legs just weren't there for whatever reason. And when he tried to create one-on-one, he had a lot of just balls that he dribbled off his foot. He would slip. I don't know. The one thing about the Clippers between Kawhi, Chris Dunn, there's a lot of length. There's a lot of physical bodies. They used Zubac on him a little bit too on the perimeter, and he held up. So the Clippers did have a lot of long physical wings with, active hands that gave him problems. But for whatever reason, KD just did not have the juice tonight. And so some of Sengun's inefficiency, I think they had no choice but to lean on him for shot creation. And so the 9 of 22, I give him a little bit of a pass for that just because the Rockets didn't have much help. I actually thought, one of the bigger takeaways from this game, and we'll see how it lasts, especially when the Rockets get healthy. But this was a game where you could see when it was in the half court late, the Rockets really needed a fifth starter that they could trust. Ime Udoka was trying to patch this together, subbing Reed for offense, Okogie for defense, and he was doing the best he could. But, Reed really helped them offensively tonight. It was a big game. He had some nice moments of creation in the fourth quarter, but then he was targeted defensively, as you would expect with a team of veteran scorers led by James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. And so it's sort of like the push and pull. And then Okogie's out there, but can he really create enough offense for you? Aaron Holiday played really well tonight, but there's a reason you started the year with Aaron Holiday not even in your regular rotation. So the Rockets tried to get to the finish line, patching together some combination of Reed, Holiday, and Okogie. They survived tonight, but in general, I do think this was a game that reminds you that hey, this team tonight, they got the win. That's great, but long term, ideally Tari or DFS. If it's not them, then maybe you have to look elsewhere in the trade market. Spoiler alert, we have a trade deadline preview show coming out in the next day or two. So the Rockets could have external options, but trade season starting on Monday, December 15th unofficially. But yeah, tonight, I just thought the Rockets did the best they could, but this was a game where Ime Udoka filling out that lineup beyond the clear top 4 was tough for him. They did the best they could, but it was not pretty. That's the best way I'll put it.
Yeah, you talked about Amen a little bit. Amen Thompson helped hold James Harden to 7 of 18 shooting tonight. But interestingly enough, as you pointed out, we're talking about point guard Amen, but he was 8 of 12 from the field. But if you want to see the vision of point guard Amen, go watch the beginning of the fourth quarter where he had 3 consecutive plays where you're like assist, assist, assist. I think it started with a sort of an in transition, beautiful pass to Reed in the corner for a corner 3 off baseline, a little bit off baseline. It's not the most advanced read, but it is a very nice pass over traffic to find him, which was great. Then he gets a steal in transition, finds Steven Adams for the slam, and then comes back on the next play over. I believe it was he was in a half court set, found Jabari underneath for a dunk, and quickly racked up 3 assists. There's potential there. We definitely know the flaws. There's all of our players have different flaws and different things, but Amen's improving in that regard.
And someone in the chat pointed out that Amen really needs Alpi. I mean, that's true. Alpi's a top 15 player. Everyone needs him, but I think the possessions that people are going to focus on late in the game, when it was KD getting the ball at the top, hitting Sengun on the short roll, and then Amen darts in because Amen's guy is going up to try and provide some extra help on KD and Sengun. I mean, you're going to run more offense in the final 5-6 minutes of a close game through KD and Sengun. So we've got to get out of this whole thing of, making a late game possession a referendum of Amen as a point guard. Because spoiler alert, if Fred VanVleet were out there, he'd be off the ball too. I think in those possessions where it's most impactful, you'd still have the same KD Sengun 2-man game as the initial preferred action. And so I don't think that's a slight on Amen at all. Like, it's more a credit to KD and Sengun. They made the plays that were there, and Amen finished at the rim. For all the criticism he's got this year for not finishing, he did finish tonight, including through traffic in the final 20 seconds of the game. By the way, Dave, I've got to get in a rant. I wanted to say this off the top. I waited, 12 minutes? Oh my God. From a fan perspective, I was actually there with my mom tonight, and man, it would have been a brutal game to take a parent to if they lost to the freaking Clippers. Thankfully they didn't. But the last minute, for someone that doesn't go to a ton of games, it's like the NBA just needs to take a step back and think of the fan experience. Like, I'm understanding of the replay reviews because they want to get the calls right, but just the 2 calls that I'm going to focus in on, and one went each way in terms of where the mistake was made, in my opinion. Just sometimes we get way too in the weeds trying to get every call right. Just ask someone sitting on a bar stool, and I think they could get the Jabari foul when Chris Dunn and Nicholas Batum were on his back with 10 seconds left, and then the Kawhi, that slight little chicken wing that he gave to Aaron Holiday. Letter of the law, the NBA can argue those as the right call. That's not good for the fan experience. I'm sorry. Like, Jabari had the rebound, clear as day. Those 2 guys are climbing on his back. They clearly make contact first. Jabari is not trying to make contact with his head area. Like, that's why they didn't call it flagrant. That was obvious. If Chris Dunn is going to lean over him and make contact with his torso, then yeah, as Jabari tries to hold the ball, of course there's going to be a risk of, some contact. Chris Dunn is putting his head in position for that to happen, and he's initiating the contact. So either no call, and I'd be fine with no call, and in that situation, it'd either be a jump ball or the Rockets would call a timeout, or call the foul on who initiates the contact. Don't call the foul and call it on basically the reactor. Like, that's just ridiculous. To me, the logical thing, just don't call it at all. Say the contact's marginal, and either it'd be a jump ball or the Rockets would call a timeout. And then the other way, look, it's a 2-point game. There's a little bit of contact. Kawhi Leonard's a Hall of Famer. Like, this is one of the best players in NBA history. Like, there was way more contact that Michael Jordan gave to Byron Russell than what Kawhi Leonard did to Aaron Holiday tonight. Like, I don't want to see the game decided in a little call like that. It's a little bit of contact, and kudos to Aaron Holiday for selling it a little bit. Do I want to see the game decided that way? No, just Yeah. I'll get off my soapbox now, but to me, it's just so silly. Like, I'm not even that mad at the reviews because they want to get the calls right. And if teams save their challenges, which both teams did, and use them, then it is what it is. But I don't want to see a game decided by those were just two ticky-tack calls. And to me, it's just, regardless of whether they're letter of the law right or wrong, you just don't need to call the game that ticky-tack when it's a 2-point margin in the final 15 seconds. Come on.
Yeah, this is kind of the double-edged sword with the replay. You want the replay thing, but sometimes when they have to go back to the replay, they have to go letter of the law on that thing. And you know what's crazy? Yeah. You know what's crazy about the Jabari thing is they reviewed it twice. Yeah. So they spent all this time reviewing to see if it was a flagrant, which was silly to begin with.
Yeah.
But then they actually challenge it and they go review it again. I'm like, well, you guys have to make these decisions split second time. And now you're going back and reviewing. It is an exhausting way to watch a game. I fully agree with you. The entire thing, Ben, it was really tough. You want the players to decide it, not the officiating.
Yeah, just let them play. I mean, it's just, that sequence, I mean, it was really thrilling. The men put back to go up 3. That's great. And then it felt like, it's at a crescendo and the Clippers are going to get a shot now. To the Rockets' credit, one thing I will say that shouldn't be overlooked, after the Aaron Holiday make, he uncharacteristically missed the first of those 2 free throws late. The Rockets picked up full court, and that was a bad turnover by Nicholas Batum, but it was a turnover because the Rockets, their effort was dialed up. There was no easy release valve like Batum was anticipating, and so that's where the turnover came from. Like that was a bad mistake. Batum will be the first to admit it, but the Rockets' effort helped cause that mistake. So even though it wasn't, it's not the way you draw it up as far as, a winning play in the last 10 seconds, it was a winning play nonetheless. So I do want to give a hat tip to that.
Yeah, and the way the Rockets have played in a couple of games, just a couple of them, you do worry about what's coming. You do have at Denver coming up. Rockets, again, going through this week of just one game. They don't play again until Monday, which is just crazy. But you want to see that offense get back there. You kind of need Tari back at some point. You need DFS to join the party, so to speak. But hey, still, I'm not taking anything away from the Rockets. Still a really good team. I thought tonight the word that people are describing up and down here was sloppy. They still ended up getting away with it. And again, to me, I'll just keep calling it their superpower. It's rebounds. I cannot stress enough to have that kind of rebounding advantage, what that means to a team when it wins. I mean, the Rockets were, I guess, 46% from the field, Clippers 50%, but the difference in shot attempts, 93 to 78, all because of those rebounds. And you, like Ime said, you're going to cough up some turnovers, or on nights when you do cough up a lot of turnovers, like you said, Ben, 10 between KD and Sengun, another 4 for Jabari. You need that kind of thing. And so you got to give basically credit tonight to Jabari, Sengun, Adams.
Jabari had a really nice stretch early in the fourth quarter when the Rockets finally got a little bit of separation. Jabari defensively was insanely active, so shout out to him for that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there were a couple of times I thought he defended Kawhi pretty well. I mean, Jabari, the main thing I've been a little bit frustrated with him lately is just the threes. 2 of 8 from 3 tonight. Just want to see him. I don't want to see him fall into this mud of like 33 to 35% threes. It's okay. It's solid, but it's not great. I want this guy to really hit that 40% mark. And just 2 of 8 from 3 tonight, and badly missed one of them late off the corner baseline. But I mean, Jabari's. We were noting it in there. He looks more spry. That one alley-oop that I think Sengun threw it to him, maybe it was Amen, I can't remember. He was up there. We all thought that was Amen at first. And then we're like, well, that's Jabari. He got some real air on that. And I think his just overall, the way he moves, the confidence in which he moves, we've talked about this quite a bit, but just the way he was able to put the ball on the floor and get to spots, I don't think it was a super showcase tonight, but I'm still quite happy with Jabari. I think you have to look at him as high-end role player upside, so you're grading a little bit differently, but I still think you've got something potentially special there in Jabari.
Yeah. And I do think this was low-key an encouraging game from Reed Shepherd. I really wish he had hit that 3 in the final 20 seconds because the roof would have come off of Toyota Center if he answered the Harden 3 with one of his own. It was a good look. Unfortunately, it didn't go down. And the Rockets, got enough offensive rebounds to still score that possession anyway. As you said, that's their superpower. But I thought Ime Udoka, they did sort of go back and forth, offense, defense, subs, but he did play a lot late in the game. He showed some creation shots in the fourth quarter. And, there was a stretch where they got separation with both Reed and Aaron in the game, despite being really undersized. And so I know it's not Ime Udoka's favorite thing to do. You could see that Ime was searching for anything. He played the jumbo lineup late in the first half, which they hadn't done a ton of lately. In the second half, they went to the other extreme. And so I think this, reflects, as Ime said, it was a sloppy game in which they were searching for any formula that would work. But I do think that the Clippers they're not a good team, But I do think that late in a game like this, they are a tough matchup for Reed in a way that teams on this upcoming road trip probably won't be. Like, I think Harden and Kawhi in particular, the combination of how physical they are, how high IQ they are, their ability to hunt Reed in half court situations, like the Clippers are not nearly as good of a team as the Nuggets, but I don't know if the Nuggets have guys on the perimeter that are that capable of, the juice that on a given possession, even if they didn't shoot well overall, just what James and Kawhi do. And some of it's just the fear they strike in the heart of opposing defenses, which is what makes Ime want to turn back to Josh Okogie. And I didn't think of it. It was actually Josh Okogie that doubled Kawhi, I think, on the late possession and basically forced that Batum turnover. But yeah, the Clippers, for all their flaws, there is a lot of high-end talent there. And I think that high-end talent forcing a switch and attacking Reed, that was what sort of stressed Ime out in a way that the teams they're about to play, no disrespect, because the Nuggets are obviously a better team overall, but I don't know if they'll be quite as difficult for Reed specifically. Like we all know the last Nuggets game, Reed was excellent in that matchup. Mm-hmm. So I do think there were some really encouraging things from Reed tonight, especially in the second half. Got overshadowed a little bit because down the stretch, the Rockets weren't sure about the offense versus defense and trying to figure out what the trade-off would and should be. But I think it's a building block. After, that week after Thanksgiving, Reed was not himself. He had some terrible turnovers against the Mavs. I thought low-key he was much better tonight. And he was rewarded by getting to pretty much finish the game.
Yeah, and I think people have talked about this in the chat a little bit as well. I mean, he just looks more comfortable out there. On-ball defense aside, there's definitely games where we've hashed that out, and that is a big issue. But he looks more comfortable offensively, and more games than not, you're looking up, and he's pretty high in the box plus minus. Tonight was, I believe, a +6. Yeah, Reed, as far as, we were talking about this in the trade show, and that'll come out here soon. But if people all across, national media are talking about the Rockets needing a point guard, and you bring in a point guard, if you do that, you're talking about significantly reduced minutes for Reed Shepherd. And I think what he's doing right now is incredibly valuable. You've already seen a lot of growth in the first 20 plus games here so far. I think that they're putting a ton of stock into him. Where they think he'll be by the end of the season, where they think he'll be next year. It's hard to imagine. I'm not saying it's impossible because the Rockets do have hopes to win this year. It's hard to imagine bringing in a heavy minute point guard into this roster.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we'll talk about it more on the trade show that obviously we taped a little bit earlier, but we'll be releasing this weekend. But yeah, if you're talking about bringing in a player of significance in terms of minutes, well, then you have to ask the question of where are the minutes going to come away from? And right now, yeah, there's a few people you can point to, but when you get Tari Eason and Dorian Finney-Smith back, and I think the expectation is within the next month to have both of those guys back, then yeah, I'm not sure where the minutes would come from. I mean, that's what you have to ask yourself. And it's a weird question because Rockets fans have not seen this team at full strength, but organizationally, like the Rockets, they know they have these guys coming back. It's not like they're in hiding. And so the expectation is that they're going to be available. And by the way, I see a comment in the chat, doesn't look like Brook Lopez has much left in the tank. Yeah, I would agree. I watched him from the stands. He looked, I don't want to say totally washed because I've seen guys of that age, have a rough game or two and bounce back, but he did not look like the same guy even relative to a year or two ago. And I think, boy, the break the Rockets got with Brook Lopez unofficially, spurning them at the last minute in 2023 free agency, people talk about it a lot in terms of the Alperen Sengun leap. And that's not always fair because I do think that those two could have played together, where I think the real bump came from is then getting Steven Adams at the ensuing deadline, because Steven Adams now compared to Brook Lopez now, that's a night and day difference. And I do feel pretty confident that if you had Brook Lopez and Alperen Sengun in that 23 to 24 season, you wouldn't have made the Steven Adams trade. And as you said, like Steven Adams is not, he's not single-handedly the Rockets' superpower, but he is an essential part of what their superpower is. And so, yeah, the Rockets got very lucky dodging the Brook Lopez bullet because it led them to Steven Adams.
Yeah, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong. Rockets will not be back here in Houston until after Christmas. And it's, I think, I got 6 straight here: at Denver, at New Orleans, at Denver again.
Yeah.
That's because of the NBA Cup scheduling issue. At Clippers, these Clippers again. Or no, excuse me, I skipped at Sacramento. At Clippers, and then at Lakers, which will be a great test. That's on Christmas Day. So we're going to see another test for the Rockets as they hit the road. A few of those, Sacramento, New Orleans, these Clippers are teams with poor records. But I will say New Orleans just dropped, let me double check it, 143 tonight against the Blazers. Beat them by 20-plus points.
They nearly beat the Spurs the other night, right before the Spurs dominated the Lakers in the Cup quarterfinal.
Yeah, I think Zion is out, and they are kind of rolling with
Derek
their rookie, Derek
good.
Queen. Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit of that Spider-Man meme with Queen and Sengun kind of looking at each other. So that'll be a fun matchup for sure. But we'll see where they are. They're 16-6. I'm not sure the Rockets are as amazing as that the first handful of games showed, but they are a really good team. Very, very clearly a really good team. And knock on wood, KD was just a bad night tonight. But we'll see here where they stand after this 6-game road swing. Anything you want to add before we close up tonight?
No, I think we pretty much hit all the high points. I'll just throw one more plug to our trade season preview show to come out this weekend. We'll put it on the LaunchPod podcast feed as well, which is where I've been stashing these for listeners that want to hear it in audio form. We get that question some in the YouTube comments. Other than that, yeah, I find it, Dave, I find this one tough to evaluate. Like between the time off both teams had going into this game, between the Clippers on paper being much better than their record, between at least in terms of the high-end talent, between how uncharacteristically awful that first half was for Kevin Durant, like beating the Clippers by 2 points at home. I get that, some people might see that as a red flag. I'm inclined for now to view it as a one-off. And I mean, the good news is with this road trip coming up, I mean, it's going to be resolved one way or another. If they have a good road trip and go 4-2 or better, then yeah, this is pretty clearly a blip. And either the Clippers are better than their record, or it was an off night for the Rockets, whatever. And if they don't have a good road trip, then like we'll have losses to talk about, and we'll go through how they lost the game. So either way, whether this is a one-off or the beginning of a trend of them not playing as well, I mean, it's going to get answered the next few games anyway as the schedule stiffens. So we'll revisit this next week when they go to Denver for 2 games. Yeah, we'll see. It should be a tough road leading up to Christmas, but I mean, they've generally played well in their high-profile matchups thus far. So knock on wood, I'm excited.
That's Ben DuBose. Rockets win 115-113 to improve to 16-6 on the year. We will. There we go. What's his name?
Truman.
There
we go.
That is an adorable dog, man. Seriously. So we'll be back with the trade deadline show this weekend. Absolutely look out for that. And as far as live post-game shows, we will be back on Monday when Rockets get to face the Nuggets in Denver. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.